My name's Eduardo, and this is the Resendiz family.
Hi, I'm Darine Resendiz.
We're from Hayward, California. We've been living there for 2 years.
We have 2 kids. Their names are Sophia and Matthew. Sophia's 4 years old and Matthew's 1.5 years. We dropped the kids off at my mother's house. I was on my way to work and it was about 10 o'clock.
I got home from her dentist appointment, Thaddeus dentist appointment, and I started getting ready to go to do an estimate.
You know, I was just starting my day, and at about 1 o'clock, I was on the phone with the patient, and I kept receiving calls from my sister. All she kept saying was, he was breathing, and I didn't know what was going on. I was a little bit confused, but I just knew it was Matthew.
My brother knocks on my door, and he's all like, I open the door, and he says, hey, Darine's on the phone.
I called my husband to let him know that Matthew was dead because I thought he was dead. And I was screaming and crying and he couldn't understand me.
Got kind of mad and frustrated. I started screaming at her and I said, calm down and tell me what's going on.
I just told him Matthew's dead and I was screaming and crying. And my coworker finally had told me that he fell in the pool.
Somehow he got outside and they had found him, you know, floating in the pool.
I remember I got out of the ambulance and I started walking up, following some of the police officers that were there into the garage. And I remember there was a really narrow hallway between a car and the garage wall where I saw a police officer and an unknown person who ended up being an off-duty firefighter doing CPR on Matthew.
As I was walking up the driveway, I saw someone wearing black, looking wet, and looking extremely pale and distressed.
He was pale. I touched him. He was cool. He wasn't breathing. He had no pulses. And the faces of the police officer and the off-duty firefighter was one of just help. We need help. This call needs to move along. So we picked up the patient and brought him to the front of the driveway, where the fire crew and my partners, we all started working. Started doing CPR, ventilating him with the BVM.
At that time, we started doing compressions. Ventilations were being done by engine 6 with a bag valve mask. One of the other paramedics was prepared to do an intubation.
And at the time when I went to intubate the child, I noticed he had a gag reflex and he started to buck the tube as it started to pass it. So I paused and looked at the monitor, and at that point in time I saw an organized rhythm.
We shortly noticed that there was a rhythm on the monitor. We stopped and checked. The patient had pulses.
At that point, we all came to the decision to put him in the ambulance and begin transport.
We got in the ambulance, I took over ventilations, and we started code 3 to the hospital.
At certain times when we would suction him, he wouldn't wake up, but he would cry. He'd kind of clench down and cry, wail out. And I remember during the transport, he would start to pink up from that really pale, lifeless color tone that he had. And Matthew started to pink up, and in the back, the fire crew and the ambulance crew, we all cheered for him. We're like, go, keep fighting, Matthew, keep fighting.
We got to the hospital. We brought the child in. We turned him over to the ER staff, and they took over.
It hit so close to home that at the end of the call, every single crew member ended up breaking down and crying.
I started to feel, I was just starting to well up with tears, and I let it out. I just decided I was going to let it out, and it was okay. And one of the other paramedics walked in and he said, I feel exactly like that guy does. And then one of the other paramedics walked in and he said, so do I. And then all of a sudden the 3 of us were sitting there just crying our eyes out.
It's an unexplainable feeling to feel that, you know, it's not in your hands.
I remember I was told him that he's supposed to bury me, I'm not supposed to bury him. And I'm just glad he made it.
There really are no words to everybody who had, you know, who was trying to help save Matthew.
It means a lot. You know, I just want to thank everybody for what they did, you know, and I'll never forget that.
It's not, I don't look at it as just a job. You know, you guys are like heroes.